I went into Scoob expecting a fun animated nostalgia trip, and honestly, I had a better time than I thought I would. Is it one of the best Scooby-Doo movies ever? No, but I also think people were a little too hard on it. For me, this lands at about a 7 out of 10, because even when it gets messy, it's still got enough heart to make it worth watching. Before I get into it, like and follow if you're into movie reviews where we actually say what we think instead of sounding like a press release. So the movie is basically about how Shaggy meets Scooby as a lonely kid. The Mystery Inc. gang forms after solving their first mystery. And years later, Scooby ends up becoming the center of a much bigger adventure involving Dick Dastardly, Blue Falcon, and an ancient prophecy. Instead of another haunted house mystery, this movie tries to turn Scooby-Doo into a full-on action adventure. And that's where people are either going to love it or check out completely. The biggest reason this movie works for me is simple. It understands that Scooby and Shaggy are the emotional core of the franchise. Everything else can change. But if those two don't feel like best friends, the whole movie falls apart. Thankfully, their relationship carries almost every emotional moment. The opening is honestly my favorite part. Watching Shaggy find Scooby, give him his name on the spot, and promise they'll never leave each other is way more wholesome than I expected. That promise ends up becoming the emotional backbone of the entire movie, so when they're eventually forced apart, it actually means something instead of feeling like fake drama. I also liked that the movie wasn't afraid to try something different. Bringing in Blue Falcon, Dynamite, Captain Caveman, and Dick Dastardly gives it a Saturday morning cartoon crossover vibe that feels surprisingly fun. Some of the jokes land, especially whenever Dick Dastardly gets frustrated because Scooby keeps calling him Rick. It's such a dumb running gag, but it got a laugh out of me more than once. Animation-wise, I think the movie looks great. The colors pop, the action is smooth, and the characters still feel recognizable even with the updated designs. It never loses that cartoon energy, which is exactly what I wanted from a Scooby-Doo movie. Now here's what almost held it back. The movie forgets it's Scooby-Doo for long stretches. Instead of solving creepy mysteries, we're suddenly dealing with ancient prophecies, magical skulls, Cerberus, giant action scenes, and superhero-style set pieces. It's entertaining, but sometimes it feels like the writers really wanted to make a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe instead of just telling a great Scooby mystery. If you grew up loving masked villains and spooky mansions, you might miss that classic formula. Another thing that didn't fully work for me is Blue Falcon. He's funny in small doses, but the movie spends so much time developing him that Fred, Daphne, and especially Velma end up feeling like supporting characters in their own franchise. Mystery Inc. never really gets enough time together, and that's a missed opportunity because their chemistry has always been one of Scooby-Doo's biggest strengths. Real talk, this movie succeeds because it remembers that friendship matters more than spectacle. The scene where Shaggy is willing to sacrifice himself to keep his promise to Scooby is honestly the strongest moment in the entire film. That emotional payoff works because the movie spent time building their friendship from the very beginning instead of assuming we'd already care. That's something a lot of family movies skip these days. At the same time, I can't ignore that the movie tries to do way too much. One minute it's a heartfelt story about two best friends. The next, it's racing through portals, superheroes, and giant monsters. It almost feels like two different movies stitched together. Neither half is bad, but I do think a simpler story would have been stronger. So yeah, Scoob isn't a perfect reboot, and it definitely isn't the classic mystery fans were expecting. But I also don't think it's a disaster some people make it out to be. It's funny, the animation looks good, the emotional moments actually land, and Shaggy and Scooby are still as lovable as ever. Sometimes that's enough. For me, Scoob gets a 7 out of 10. Not because it reinvented Scooby-Doo, but because underneath all the giant action scenes and superhero stuff, it never forgets what actually makes this franchise special. Two best friends who would do absolutely anything for each other. What did you think of Scoob? Did you enjoy the new direction, or would you rather see the gang stick to classic haunted mysteries? Let me know, and if you like movie reviews that don't sound like everyone else's, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.